The President Tinubu-led presidency has now struck its first deal with organized labor. The question is, will it fulfill them? Organized labor suspended their planned nationwide strike after reaching some 7 resolutions last night at the Aso Villa. Let's take a look at them. The federal government, the TUC and the NLC have now agreed to establish a joint committee to review the proposal for any wage increase or award and establish a framework and timeline for implementation. There's also an agreement to review World Bank Finance Cash Transfer Scheme and propose inclusion of low-income earners in that program. The revival of the compact natural gas conversion program earlier agreed with labor centers in 2021 and work out detailed implementation as well as the timing. There's also the need to review issues hindering effective delivery in the education sector, as well as proposing solutions for implementation. There's also the review and the establishment of the framework for completion of the rehabilitation of Nigeria's refineries. Number 6 on that list is the provision of a framework for the maintenance of roads and expansion of rail networks across the country. And last but not the least would be some other demands submitted by the TUC to the federal government, which will be assessed by the joint committee. Let's speak now to CEO Economic Associate, Dr. Teriba. Thank you for joining us on First 100 Days. Let's take a look at this list. To start with, the federal government is now yet talking about the need for a wage increase, a review of the minimum wage. We've been through this route before, but as we speak right now, some state governors are still even battling with paying the 30,000 naira minimum wage. How excited are you about this move?
Well, let's begin by noting that the understanding reached, between the government and the organized labor for them to call off the strike and come to the dialogue table is good for Nigeria, is good for everybody. We should commend the government, the federal government, for embarking on the democratic engagement of labor, as one of the groups that might lose, that might bear the brunt, the negative brunt of the removal, of the subsidy. Now, I do urge the negotiators to please focus on the problem that subsidy removal raises, which is how to mitigate the negative consequences of subsidy removals on the livelihoods of vulnerable segments of the populace, and not change the topic. If I look at the items listed on the demand list, you could say that we are expanding the conversation beyond, the confines that it should be kept to. Mitigating. Nigeria has been through this path several times before. We've during the structural adjustment program, we did SAP relief package, which was a dated intervention, 6 months payouts, to vulnerable workers to help them absorb the shock of liberalization. And after 6 months, it ended. We were not doing the 6 months, which is that component is what the World Bank loan is replicating. In my view, if the government can find an acceptable relief package for labor to cushion the shocks for the first 6 months, I think that should be sufficient. Adding roads, adding transport infrastructure, adding minimum wage. You know how long it takes to negotiate minimum wage on its own. So if minimum wage is on the cards, it has its own merits. You will come to it. It shouldn't be, co-joined with subsidy removal. And the reason why a 6-month proposal may make sense is that, see, subsidy removal, most of its negative impacts are immediate. If subsidy is successfully removed, you are going to get beyond the immediate supply responses.
I get your point, Dr. Teriba. You're saying that the agreement should be tailored specifically to the issues that,
cushioning the
exactly,
immediate
that
impact of
cushions
subsidy removal.
the immediate needs
there should be
of
no
Nigerians.
long-term.
Absolutely. I just quickly want to bring your attention to what appears to be number 3 on that list. The plan was to have made available alternatives required before the removal of subsidy itself, and one of it was the deployment of autogas. In 2022, the federal government, had met with oil marketers to perfect plans for the full deployment of autogas in filling stations, as well as the conversion of 200,000 commercial vehicles to run on gas that year. That didn't see the light of the day. Is anything expected to change now that the deal is back on the list?
Well, the fact that that didn't happen is no fault of the new regime. I do not think we should pile too much on the new regime because of previous disappointments. Whatever commitments are made to labor must be funded. And we know the fiscal situation that the new regime is inheriting. So I will urge the government not to overcommit. Let's do the 6 months and see the impact on usage. People are likely to use less fuel. Traffic is likely to reduce. I mean, the people who put convoys of 10 cars on the road are likely to trim down their convoys. And you are likely to see supply response. As demand is falling and supply is rising, perhaps in the course of the 6-month period, you might see prices actually come down because of supply glut. So let's wait for that. If at 6 months you still feel that some hardship persists, you can extend, you can discuss again and extend, but we are trying to stop subsidy because it cannot be funded by government.
Absolutely.
Therefore, government should not make commitments beyond its capacity to fund those commitments.
Specifically,
we should have
specifically,
caution,
what
yes.
do you make of this World Bank finance cash transfer? Because the outgone administration had borrowed, some 800 million in this regard. The reality on ground before now has been, how much impact does, doling out cash have on the Nigerian economy?
In the end, I mean, the impact of subsidy removal, the impact of upward adjustment of pump prices is that it's going to reduce the real purchasing power of people's incomes. So agree on the income earners that is going to be captured. If somebody is saying 5 million Nigerians, would TUC and NLC agree that they have 5 million heads? So this should form the subject of negotiation with the organized labor. Let's know what the numbers are, and let's agree with them what they think is satisfactory compensation for the fact that pump price of PMS has now moved to 500 naira, average of 500 naira per liter. 5,000 that was going to be paid to 5 million people turns out now to be 10 liters relief, 10 liters of PMS equivalent per month. Will labor be satisfied with that? So let's reach out and see what we provide immediate relief. If 5,000 is too low, what's enough? But it should be temporary commitment, but no more than 6 months, because we can always come back. 6 months takes us to the end of the year. You can always come back and decide whether you want to extend the relief, or you feel that the negative consequences have now finally given way to positive consequences.
Indeed.
If our experience with GSM telephony is anything to go by, it's like you saying that at the beginning, people had to pay for SIM card exorbitantly. They had to pay for handset. They had to pay for airtime, cutthroat rates. But 6 months, 1 year down the road,
per minute
if
billing.
you had made long-term commitments, because of that initial, hardship, you would have regretted it. Airtime is free.
It's a good
Some
place
of
to
our
live
children
it.
would believe that there was a time that we bought
Dr.
SIM
Teriba.
cards in this country.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. The meeting is due to reconvene in a few days. Like you said, this agreement has extended into issues like wage increase. Even the education sector is included, as well as rehabilitation of the nation's refineries. Perhaps they'll be talking about the modalities of implementation when they meet again.
Raise the quality of the conversation.
Absolutely.
And the new regime has plans for infrastructure. They have plans for all of the other topics, for education, for health. Labour shouldn't join that, to this, so that government will get to those other items. But let's deal specifically, the surgery that wants to be made, how to, kill the pain around the area and not be talking about the entire manifesto of the new government just because we want to change, or we have just changed from prices.
Dr. Teriba, CEO, Economic Associate, thank you for your thoughts on the program this evening.
Thank you.
And that's our program today. What a repeat broadcast tomorrow at 6 a.m. and back again at 6 p.m. tomorrow for more updates. I'm Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again at the top of the hour.